Thank you, everyone, for joining. This session here came about that a lot of folks have asked me over the years how I seem to get really great jobs. And I kind of giggled about that because I don't consider my job always a great job. I have a tendency also to pick the dark colors, pick the jobs that people may on first view or looking at the job from the job offer that it may not look that attractive. I do Oracle and Azure at Microsoft. If you're not familiar with me, I am the SME for Oracle on Azure at Microsoft. Oracle is of course a non-native product over there. I like to describe us as a foster child with a trust fund. That means everybody wants the cash, nobody wants the foster child. So it's very interesting. I do a lot of battling, a lot of warrior work, and I kind of do well at that. But I've had a long history as a database administrator, DevOps engineer, software developer. I've been in the industry for about 25 years now. I was deep in the Oracle world. I was an ACE director, which is kind of the same as MVP. We have ACE associates, ACE is ACE director. There's different levels of that. I'm also an Oak Table member, which is a group of Oracle scientists. There's 100 of those in the world. So, I am deep on the Oracle side, but I've always been Microsoft too. When I got my first database after getting my Oracle certification, it was actually a 7 terabyte SQL Server 7. So I've always been Microsoft, always been Oracle, and I just do that all, and I really enjoy it. And so when I came here to Microsoft, I planned on, really going back deep into Microsoft. And within about 4 months, I realized that Oracle was like this anchor holding back all these Azure projects. So guess what? I'm back in the Oracle world. There's no escape. So let's see if my slides will move. Here we go.
I was unmuted. I laughed about that. Sorry. I laughed about the Oracle thing. We have this whole thing going on where I work where we got rid of Oracle, but then we got acquired by another company and they have Oracle.
Yes.
So we have to take it back over. So it just keeps coming back.
And the truth be told, for all of our projects too, a lot of folks will come in and go, oh, it's Oracle against SQL Server. And I've had to pull them completely out of the trenches and go, no, it's cloud against cloud now. And of our customers, 100% of them pretty much have Oracle. And of those, 70% of those Oracle databases cannot leave Oracle. They're like Oracle e-business suite. They're actual Oracle applications that can only run on Oracle, cannot be revamped. So I'm a necessity. I'm absolutely a necessity. So we now have a holistic view of looking at Oracle on Azure, and I'm part of even the Oracle migration tool that you're going to see in the next iteration. This is an essential piece. It's a whole revamp of the way that Microsoft has looked at Oracle, because it's either that or they can continue to feed GCP and AWS. It's one or the other. Right. So they realize the necessity of my world, and it's why we have 5 headcount opening up on my team. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, but it is a change. It's a whole kind of that you talk about bias and everything else. We have a bias against Oracle. People are like, oh, we don't do Oracle. And it's like, you're going to have to learn. So it's so much fun to be me right now. So let's talk about what it is in our work and, all these things. We start talking about this is the average American is where I got some of this data. We spend 13 years, 2 hours at work on average. We only spend 328 days of our life with our friends socializing, but we spend 13 years at our job. We change jobs 10, 15 times on average in our lifetime. And due to technology, even if we're not working at home, we're supposed to be working in an office, we'll spend 5 hours, a week working still. So when you realize that this is a lot, 90,000 hours in a lifetime that you spend at your work, it better not suck. It just better not. And I guess that's always been my feeling is people go, oh, you live your life, you work your work. You don't want to keep those two intermingled, but so much of it ends up being your life. So this was extremely important to me, and especially with the change in the pandemic. I have been a remote worker since 2011, 2012, and even partially before that. So I've always worked remote. I saw the crushing change that occurred during the pandemic. We realized that 92% of individuals claimed that, during the pandemic, mental health issues became a bigger deal, that they were recognizing this. It wasn't more that we were just talking about it. It was a realization that the pandemic created more of an impact. Economic burden, they say, is equal to, in the workplace, 4% of the GDP. That's a lot of money, a lot of money. 67% report that they don't get the mental health support they need. You know, I am an ADHD family. I joke about, you know, I come from parents with ADHD. My children's father has ADHD. I am the ADHD spokesperson, practically. I joke about this for women. You know, and I have children all that have ADHD, and one of my children does go to, is part of the military, and they have completely just gouged military support healthcare, and he's unable to get the support that he needs. It's, you know, 10 weeks just to get an appointment. He isn't able to get the medication that he relies on. And for those of us with ADHD, you know, a small amount of medication, you know, after us addressing it through diets and other things, can really make a drastic improvement in our lives. So you recognize that, you see that constantly. My other children have dealt with this as well, of people not understanding mental health care. They won't treat it like they do any other health issue. So we're also told that our job may be supposed to suck. And I never understood this. Like I said, I was really dedicated to my work. I was the breadwinner. I am, you know, my children call me the mothership, the bank of mom. I am the one that they rely on. So my job can't suck. I just wasn't willing to do that. I have very short patience. I see things extremely analytical, very logically, and it didn't make any sense to me. But the most common complaints that we hear are about too many hours, you know, long commutes. I hated commutes. There's a reason that I've worked from home for so long. Workplace bullies and bad teams. Workplace bullies, we were just discussing in the last session with Cindy, and I myself have an interesting history with workplace bullies. Talk about somebody that brings out the worst in them. I am it. And it's not like I am a target. I am one that winds them up and they implode. I'm a very interesting situation with workplace bullies. Bad bosses, same thing. A lot of bad bosses are also bullies. So same thing. I will wind them up and HR is going, what the heck did you do to them? I'm that person. So if you've ever seen it, we can discuss that. It's very interesting. Lack of company vision. This frustrates me as well. I see the big picture. I always have been. I am one person. I do know that I have vision, that I see things. That's why I'm building out Oracle on Azure. And, you know, anybody ask me at Microsoft, I am absolutely Team Satya all the way. That man has total vision and it goes from the top down, and I love it. I love it there. Would I have survived working under, you know, the Steve Ballmer days? Probably not. Probably not done well as well. I did not do well under Oracle. You know, this whole idea of companies without vision that have a tendency to just jump at whatever sticks and, you know, whatever will make the cash versus making people happy and doing what's right for people, probably not going to work for me. Lack of advancement or better pay. We were just discussing about pay, and I will go into that as well. And little skill training or growth. I always like the comment of, you know, what if we train them and they go? And somebody responded and said, what if we don't train them and they stay? So I've always believed in that very strongly, and we'll talk about that as well. So this session is going to focus on the top issues that impact you, you know, satisfaction around your mental health in your workplace and why it's so essential. If you have a bad day at work, it can really, you know, deal with your bottom line, not just your mental health, but you think about how it impacts your sleep. You may just come home and go straight to bed, and then you're up at 2 a.m. I mean, you think about these things, it can be really, really impacting. Pinpoint that data that kind of backs up this. You'll see me go back and forth between the data and then into, you know, these go, no goes, and we'll talk about that, and offering options of how to address it. So the long game or the fast exit, this is how I viewed everything every single time. I am a long game person. I look at strategies. Is this worth me staying in the fight, in the battle, in the game, or is it worth me now to say, cut my losses, walk away? And the worthy is are these problems addressable where you're at? Do you have executive sponsorship? Again, good bosses, good leadership, extremely essential to this. Do they have vision? Will the changes satisfy your needs? You know, making sure that as you're looking at this, is this really what you want? Do you know what you want? And we're going to talk about that as well. And can you set deadlines for change? I am extremely decisive. When I recognize something as being a waste of my time, I will pull it off my list immediately. I will pull myself out and disengage immediately. And I think that's difficult for a lot of people. So hopefully I can give you some kind of clear, decisive ways of saying it's time to make an executive decision and not be afraid of that. And is your current job the correct one for your career path? I know there's a lot of companies that have career path options and training for people, and I'm technical. When I am constantly being pushed towards more of an administrative role for my advancement that is going to take me away from technical challenges, I'm not happy. It's not going to keep me satisfied. They've tried to turn me into a product manager, into a program manager over my career. I'm not interested in that. Never have been. I am one that people follow, but do I want to lead people? No, I'm not really intrigued by that. One, I'm just too self-centered. I'm just not the right person for that kind of role. And I know that that's not where I am going to be the most productive version of me, the most, successful version of me. I am a Rambo. I am a warrior of one. And I think that's really important to understand who you are and where your best way to serve in a company and a business and how you can be most successful. When to walk away. Realize that culture is a big impactor of this. When a cultural change, the company has always done things this way, that you introduce solutions and options for success, and there is always somebody there making sure that it will never go a step forward. That is a cultural impact that may say it's time to walk away. Leaders are the source of the issues. If you don't have good leadership, if you don't have a good boss, I like to say that your job is only as good as your boss. Your boss is also the reason that most often we leave jobs. So we need to be aware of that very much. That no path resolution requirements are too difficult to address. If you keep hearing that, we just can't do this or we won't do this. Is it really just, again, a cultural choice, a lack of interest, just want to keep doing things the way they are? This is a problem. And also, if history has shown, they will do that over and over again, or that they'll change only temporarily, only to return to the poor decision making or lack of productive, resolution. Think about that and realize that it's time to walk away. So during the pandemic, 42% increased the amount of work from home. I don't know how many of you, if you want to put in the chat, that now work from home, completely, that didn't before. Definitely state that and let me know, do you like it? Yes, I like it. No, I don't. I would be very interested to see who is who. I've been one of those that if they called me back into the office with my ADHD, they would be dragging me. They would be dragging me, kicking and screaming. Like I said, the first time, I have always worked from home. I love working from home, but the first time I went into an office with the open cube concept and the walls were like right to here, I thought I was going to die. I really did. I live with noise canceling headphones, even in my house. I want that peace and quiet. I need controlled distraction. I don't want to hear people talking on the phone or fingers tapping on keys or somebody snapping gum. That is going to kill me. So I refuse it. We just had a session 2 weeks ago where they brought our team back into headquarters to do, hey, we get to join all back in and have a team building session. And I hated it. I don't need it. I can do team sessions if I want to see one of my teammates. I do not need to have them sitting next to me in the next cube. It means nothing to me. So yeah, I'm with some of the other folks that have stated in here that no, they would quit before they would go back to the office. I'm right there with you. And even with, I hear the same thing that Mala is saying right here, that a lot of folks that I know said, I like the inter-office interaction. I miss that. And it's been interesting at Microsoft that they recognize there's a lot of folks like that. And you see these, these cultural sessions that are sent out to try to help with that. It's funny because us introverts that are just happy to be working from home and want nothing to do with it, we're like, please stop sending these to us. We don't want them. We have no interest in it. One of the things that was interesting is the percentage of hours worked daily increased for people that were working from home. A lot of us didn't, if we didn't have that boundary of saying it's 5 p.m., we're done, we're walking away from the office. Now we're working from home and the boundary is not there, or we have a commute, or that we leave the office, we're done. And so increases in our work time has actually happened. And some of that is just losing the commute itself. And that was one of the reasons I was glad to get rid of the commute, because I didn't want to waste that time in the car, that I could be doing productive things that would give me more time for me to do stuff that I needed to do for my personal life. So I appreciate it. They also noticed, of course, the commute, decreased because of that. So how can we address this? Start out with too many hours. What drives this hours? Especially in technology, we have kind of this programmer, gamers kind of issue where people go, if I'm sitting at the office, I'm doing a lot of hours. And I don't know about the rest of you. I felt this all the time when I was a DBA. I was a single mother when my children were young. I was the main breadwinner, the main caregiver, everything. And I would have to go get the kids from school when they were sick. And my boss would be like, you're leaving? You have to leave? Do you? And the guys had their wives that could do this. And they'd be there for 12 hours a day. And I'm like, I do more in 8 hours a day than they do in 12. This really concerns me, that when I left that same position that I was just talking about, they ended up having to hire 2 people to replace me. That role had grown so much and I was handling so much in the hours I did work that they had to, hire 2 headcount. You recognize that they were shorting what our roles really required. And that's extremely important. If they can hire more headcount to help and get hours down to a regular amount, that's a reason to stay. If you have an immediate need, that's one thing. But long-term, you got to look at that again. If people are not addressing the demands of the workplace or removing people, let's say people are leaving and they're not replacing that headcount, that's another real red flag. And poor leadership. You've got poor leadership that are in there and saying, oh, so-and-so can handle that task now. Oh, we'll distribute their workload now that they're gone to the rest of the people and they can work those hours and cover it up. Oh, I expect you to be dedicated to this position. Aren't you dedicated to the company, this work style of impacting your work-life balance? That's usually a pretty big red sign or a big red flag. So how can you fix this? I stopped being part of the culture. I won't lie to you. I set very clear boundaries. My husband and I work on the same team here. And if he's working too many hours, I might be really quick about just saying, I'm done. I'm not working these extra hours. I'll start pushing back just to help us both out. I've always done this. I was very clear about setting up weekly reports saying this is what I accomplished, to focus on performance measured by the outcome, not by the hours. To show that, a lot of times you find out these people that are working 12, 15 hours a day and working every night and all this stuff, they'll end up burned out. And a resource that has that time off to recuperate, to recover, they're going to be less burned out and be more productive. And they found that when you're working 40 to 45 hours, that you're more capable, more, productive and able to contribute to the company. Make your peers and your leadership accountable. I do have a tendency to go to my teammates and say, we need to do this together. This week, I let the rest of, we have a little women in tech group for my team, surprisingly in infrastructure. I have a high number of women and people of color that are on our team. And just saying to our WIT group, our little WIT chat on the side, saying, if any of you need to book a meeting with me so you can have time off or need time so other account teams won't book us, we're global. So to keep from people doing that, feel free to book something with me and just put in there enough, ENUF, and I'll know what it is and I'll accept it and we're good. And they're doing that. And that means that they then look like they're booked and somebody else can't book it. So we work together to try to make our lives easy. And I think that's important to have those peers and that leadership knows this. And our boss is good and he's going to support us and push back on that. That is incredibly supportive. So if you've got somebody higher up that is trying to push this kind of culture, that you have a boss that supports that fresh resources, that your life comes first, and that working just lots of hours does not mean the same as being productive. And set SLAs, set priorities, make lists to address things, whatever's taking that extra time, whatever is, when we start talking about short-term versus long-term. Let's say somebody releases really poor code into production that you're having to support after hours. Make sure that they are accountable for it. Put them on the after hours pager, that they have to help with maintaining it because they're going to be more likely to fix it then. So too long commute, why would you want to stay? If people are willing to negotiate that you work remote, if you've got a too long commute, say you come to the office 3 days, 2 days out of the week that you're going to work from home. That way to save on that commute time. Schedule meetings during your commute. Can you call into meetings during that time so that you have more working time and less shorter days in the office? That will help balance that out. Find relaxation options during your commute, not if you're driving, only if you're doing public transportation, please. But audiobooks is all right. But being able to read or do work while you're actually commuting on, the train or something, that might be beneficial too. Find a happy medium, something that works well. This was something that I did. When I was working and had long commutes, I found daycare costs were just incredibly expensive, and I'd end up with after-hour additional care because of my long commute. I ended up hiring a live-in nanny. Found out that for me, I had an extra bedroom. She ended up moving into my house, and that worked out exceptionally well for a lot less cost. So think outside the box. There might be opportunities for you to find solutions for a distinct problem. And that was one that I just put in here in italics, because it was something that came in handy for me when I was dealing with this problem, and really solved this issue. And later on, my second live-in nanny was a very close friend that needed a solution for herself while she was with a newborn, and was able to take care of my kids. She moved in with me. It gave her a break during her transition as a single mother. This was a great solution for her. So a lot of times we women working together can come up with solutions in our community that other people may not think of in traditional means. When to exit? Requirement by your company and physical presence. I like to call this button chair requirement. Just being in your chair does not mean that you must be there at 8 a.m. and you have to be there till 5 p.m. That, again, goes along with those long hours. It doesn't mean anything. No, especially in the technical world today and how many of us can remote work. None whatsoever. This is an old way of thinking, and it's usually a poor way of thinking, especially with the demands on many people these days with pandemic and children doing remote learning and daycare, lack of daycare, all of these things. Micromanagement of time. Somebody who is micromanaging that time and expecting you to be there, expecting that commute to be there, saying that it is a 45-hour work week at least, and you need to be there at that time. Set limits on how far away that you do for home. This is when you're starting to look at that exit. I had a number of women that I've mentored that have said remote work was one of the requirements as we started to work for their next job, and put that on there. If that's there, if that's a requirement for you, list that down. There are so many remote work requirements or opportunities these days that were not there just a couple of years ago, and I love seeing them. And if there's a significant change in your schedule, especially at the last minute, that continues to come up, and you're expected to be there, and you have a long commute, and they want you present for it, that is definitely a reason to start looking for another job. So how is this affecting parents in the pandemic? 53% of households became the primary caregiver, as well as the primary teacher, caregiver, parents. We are seeing huge numbers of people. And even though this is declining a little bit more now that the pandemic, we're coming out of it, people are feeling this pressure. It can really impact your mental health when you start talking about how everything is working. I know I have one child that I am paying partially her rent, another one that is living in our RV while she goes to helicopter school. We have a third one that is moved out here, and we bought him a condo while he's going to school. There are pressures on a lot of parents right now, no matter if it's younger children, adult children, adult parents, aging parents, that people are feeling that for. And we need to recognize the impact of anxiety, stress levels, everything, and how this is going to impact us. Next, let's talk about workplace bullies and the cost of this. We were just discussing this last time, but I don't know if anybody talked about just the cost in this. There is an increase of 20% turnover, 30% increase in absenteeism, and this is globally due to bullying, the distraction from tasks, loss in productivity. Anybody who's bullied understands this, the inability to do what you just want to do for the day. Ability to work on tasks, especially detail-oriented tasks that we in the technical field are often responsible for. When we have a bully that is just wasting our time and interfering with us just being the best that we can. On average, they say $83,000 in internal costs per a single workplace bully. That's a lot of money that's cost to the company, not counting the estimated 450 to 500 billion in revenue. This is an annual cost of dollars, not counting litigation costs that is in the millions of dollars. I do have links to this in the end of the slide deck if you're interested in where this data came from. Pretty amazing. This is what I never understood. I will share with you the first story, my first DBA job, and how my husband and I met had to do with a workplace bully. She was my lead DBA, and she caused me a lot of grief, a lot of trouble. I almost left database administration because of it. After I was in the project management field, the gentleman who became my husband was a mentor at that point, and he had come in and just told my boss at that time, don't let Kellyn leave tech. She picked up this area of technology that we were training her on faster than anybody else. She should stay technical. And so the boss at that time asked if I wanted to come back. I said yes, but I can't come back the way that I left. And knowing that where the weak points were in this bully, said she's having trouble with project management. I just, finished my product management training. I said, why don't I come in and I will do the project management for the group. I said, I will put in the system that we're using for the other infrastructure team to track projects, to track work and tasks, and it will sign out. And we won't have to worry about some of the things that were the reason for me leaving, that she was blaming us when she would make a mistake, a technical mistake. So we put that in place. Sure enough, within a month, she started blaming myself as well as the other DBAs for her mistakes. Thing was, now we were able to track this. So I went to HR with an entire pound of paper and said, boom, don't want her fired. I want you to hold her accountable, that this is unfair to the company. This is how much it's cost us in revenue. This is how much it's cost in time, user access to systems, everything. It just went through the facts. That was on a Thursday evening. Monday morning, they walked in and walked her out, and she was fired. And this is how I dealt with this bully. So how do you decide if you stay? If there is executive sponsorship and they want to address the bully assertively, this helps. A bully will always be a bully. But if you have a firm hand on her, him or her, bullies can be either male or female, they will keep them in line, and it will be a little bit easier to work with them. You can do as I did, collect the data on the bully. Usually bullying is a lot to do with insecurity. That is why I have a tendency to ramp bullies up and have them just explode and there's no innocent bystanders and there's blood everywhere, is because I am really comfortable with myself. And it's not about my capabilities, but even more so about my weaknesses. I just kind of am comfortable with all my faults, and that will drive a bully just nuts. So if you can collect this data and collect it fact-wise and bring it to them, bring it to HR, bring it to the business. I had another bully that we reported up to in a future business, and I was able to show HR that it was a conflict of the business for me and the DBA teams to be reporting up to them. And I moved my entire DBA staff over to the operations group, and that stayed in place. You'll even see that in LinkedIn, that people are put in references for me on moving to a better structured team environment. That was me getting rid of our bully that we reported to at that time. So I've done this more than once. It's not fun, and I don't know if I do it to this day. I'm too old and I'm too tired for it. Know that it is a battle, and it's important to follow through and dot your I's and cross your T's and have the long game in mind, because most bullies are very short game minded. Try to engage with the bully as little as possible. Remote work may help with this. When it's time to exit, one, you don't want to take up that battle. If you're not interested in taking up that battle, just walk away. That's what most people will tell you on this. You may need to just exit the team though. Make them go to another team, another department, and get away from them. If you are going to leave, do everyone a favor. What I find is that when somebody is bullied, often they may leave and not say anything, and know that bullies are very rarely one-time bullies. I have had a bully that we found out had other victims 2 decades before that mentored me later on. These bullies, it's like a drug addiction. They need to have a new target over and over again. So make sure when you have an exit interview, let them know. Stick to facts, not on feelings, but let them know what caused you to leave and make sure that it's documented, because that will serve the next person who's bullied down the line. And don't jump at any opportunity. You're going to want to get away from this as fast as possible, but think the long term, because you don't want to jump out of the pan and into the fire. To get you a better option, and that is the best revenge on a bully, is to do better, is to be in a better position later on. Next is the bad boss, the curse of the bad boss. Technical arenas seem to be very kind of cursed with this. I see this constantly because we've had this background of the programmers and the gamers of sitting, being in a situation where somebody might be promoted that was sitting there eating Cheetos and working 24/7 and maybe very technically skilled, but everybody liked them, so they promote them. You find out that they have a lot of control issues, really not leadership skills. We see this constantly. The technology industry just kind of leads to this. Your boss, your job is only as good as your boss. And where this kind of comes into play is bad bosses do cost U.S. companies $360 million each year. That is, again, links are all on here. I've got the NPR link down into the reference slide. They talk about the great resignation that everybody discusses during the pandemic. What they don't discuss is that many people left those jobs not because of the pandemic, but because they didn't want to deal with bad bosses anymore. They didn't want to deal with bad companies that didn't know how to deal with the pandemic, what was required to do remote work. They were putting them into risky situations, which again goes back to bad bossing. And we all want like the Ted Lassos of the world, or, dream of a Leslie Knope for a boss. We don't always get that. So how do we kind of help that along? Start looking around your business and see who is the good boss, who are the good team. Before I accept any position, I will tell you straight out that I find contacts in that group. I reach out to people via LinkedIn, via my network, and find out where I'm looking to go. I usually start doing this like a year before I jump. I mean, I'm doing this a long term before. And I start to ask questions. I ask serious questions. How is this team? I was talking about that woman that was bullied by the same person 2 decades before I bullied. She was my support person for the Oracle group. I had 2 offers when I was going to Oracle, and I brought them to her, and she researched them, and she said, take B, don't take A position, because A position, it's not a team that's going to survive, and this is why. She was able to research that. She was absolutely right. Within 3 months, that team dissolved. She saved me a lot of headache. Finding those contacts within the company are really good. I will also tell you that women are better at this than men. I think because we're natural caregivers, that we're more expected to do our due diligence and be 110% good at this. Fantastic at negotiating for each other. We are fantastic at also doing this kind of support for each other. If you do this support, know that this shift may only be temporary. I have helped women go to other teams only to be drawn back into the original team, which is really frustrating. Find out what the long-term vision is for the team. Do some research on that and collect references and keep them up to date in LinkedIn. And this is for your own benefit If you're staying, if that move doesn't serve well, always keep your LinkedIn profile up to date just so you're always ready, and that it doesn't set a flag up, for that bad boss that you're looking to jump. If it's always up to date, he can never know when you're going to jump. Just do it to make your life easier there. Know when to exit. Boss doesn't understand your value, doesn't understand what you do, doesn't understand what makes you valuable. That's a sign of a bad boss right there. He micromanages. I am horrible with micromanagers. I just need to be shown the finish line and let me get there. Kellyn, go run the race, get me there. That's my job. If you're saying, Kellyn, you're running the race, but I noticed you wore this shoe and you have your shoelace tied this way. Why did you do that? Why didn't you wear these shoes? That is going to just cripple me. There's nothing left in me when that's happening. So that's micromanagement, a good example of it. Don't deal with that. That's a bad sign, and it doesn't let you grow and be the best that you can be. They're only interested in progressing their own career and not interested in how their reports are going to support. When I was looking for my next promotion, I made my manager accountable for that. Said, I've done all the footwork. I need you to make sure that I get there. If you have a boss that's really dedicated to that, that's a good sign of a good boss. They withhold training or isolates employees. Again, we were talking about that. What if they don't train them and they stay? You will notice that in bad businesses. If you have a lot of folks that aren't well trained, it's very likely that the managers have withhold training. And again, it's a sign of a bad boss. Doesn't respect boundaries, work-life boundaries. That means that they're emailing you at 3 a.m. and they expect you to respond at 3 a.m. It's probably a bad sign and time to leave. So departure of working mothers from service industry. Where we started to see this a lot during the pandemic. What was interesting is in the service industry, it was really, really high. I mean, all these open positions, people didn't realize how many of these were working women who just could not do it, working mothers that could not do it. But that doesn't mean that our industry wasn't impacted as well. I mean, these are hundreds of thousands of people. And when we start talking about us, we're in that yellow circles of technical and professional industry. That's where we fall into, and the numbers are still incredibly high. A lot of people just could not deal with what was going on during the pandemic and how to manage people effectively. And that gets into our company, from the company level. We've now gone up from manager up, bosses up to the actual company. Lack of vision. I really have been happy with what Satya has done and the vision for the company, and that it goes from the top down. If you have fractured vision within a company, nobody knows what anybody should be doing, and you're going to have a lot of missteps, a lot of lack of guidance, and this could be heavily impacting your satisfaction with your job. Vision should come from that top down, and a company that does that often eats their own dog food. They're not just recommending that people use their products, doing the same things they do. They will also look at what are strong trends, environmental legacy of a company, what is, their political messages, you'll know all of that. They're going to want betterment for the earth. They're going to look globally, not just locally to their company. And I think that makes a change. I've stated that this is the reason to stay. Some companies will be trying to get this together, and especially I have a feeling this is where Microsoft kind of came from as we went from the Bomber years to the Satya years, is that you still see some of the Bomber folks still around, and they're still, some of them have transitioned and some are still transitioning. So this is where I call that the ducks may not be in a row, but they're kind of flapping around in the same pond. This is that idea that you see the light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a train. That's a reason to stay. That's a reason that you say that, this is going to get better, and I do think we can get there. So I want to see this through. You have to make that decision. And that's important to me. When I can see that light at the end of the tunnel, or those ducks all flapping around in the same pond, I'm like, I can help this along. I'm good with this. I understand the vision. When you do want to exit is when leadership doesn't even understand what the company's doing. My last company I was with, I could see that vision just wasn't there. Even though I was able to meet what the person I replaced asked me to do, as soon as I finished it, I was gone. I knew they were never going to kind of get it together with the leadership they had in place, so I walked. You know, they have a tendency to copy what is cool versus what is really the right thing. You'll see that in the way that they have all these initiatives, but they just try to check boxes. They're not actually doing anything. We see this a lot with diversity and inclusion, that they'll have a diversity and inclusion initiative, but they're not really making differences in the leadership and the higher up. You know, their board of directors is still all white dudes, and their diversity and inclusion may be run by a white guy. And you're like, that's not good. That's not good. These are the kind of things that you're going to see. I also see a lot of problems where you have these women in leadership positions or people of color in leadership positions. And for women, they'll still be doing a lot of administration tasks. And it's identified as this. That bothers me. That is a red flag, like nobody's business. And marketing states a lot of buzzwords, but doesn't match it in actions. Again, you'll see the same thing. They use all the bright and shiny words, but are they really doing what needs to be done to make the company successful and make their employees successful? Lack of advancement and compensation. We were just kind of talking about this too. I ask what people are making. When it was kind of faux pas, I used to get the guys to go out drinking with me and get them, once they were drunk, to tell me what they were making. And that's how I found out that I was making 25% less than my coworkers, even though I was told when I tried to negotiate my salary that I was making more by far than anyone else. So I found out that the leadership was lying to me and started planning my exit right there and then, and took a 20% raise immediately. That's what you have to do. You know, this was really important for me to know because it was very telltale about the company that I was working for. Identify what I want. Do I want extra pay? Do I want a promotion? Do I want both? Sit down and really think it through. It's really important to you. If you can figure that out, that's reason to stay. And, you know, are they willing to negotiate? I have been fired for negotiating my salary. They think that I just negotiated with somebody who had never negotiated with a woman before. And they called up my contract company and just said, thanks Kellyn for her time. She's done. And it was a wake up call, but I will also tell you, and 3 days later, I had more than I had asked for in my negotiation for a new company and was quite happy there. Identify peers and mentors to review offers, raises, a second set of eyes. Again, I'm going to go back into this. I think women are fantastic at this in companies. Before I went to Microsoft, Bruno Borges and Patrick LeBlanc reviewed my offers that I had for Microsoft. Oracle, I had a number of individuals do it for their. Every place I've gone, I have found somebody inside the company that might know some inside details. You find out that, oh, you can max out vacation pay, or, oh, ask for more of a signing bonus. They know the inside deals that will get you the most from that offer. They'll also know a little bit about the teams. Right now, I've got a person who's, interviewing with different groups, and I'm able to get contacts for them and find out, what does this team do? What do the other people that are on that team do? Oh, I know this person. Oh, that person there, they would not work for a bad team. So that's a good place to go. Those kind of things are extremely essential that you'll never find out while you're going through the interview. And make yourself indispensable. Make sure they know it. I am a strong believer in a quote from Steve Martin: be so good that they can't ignore you. And I believe that nobody knows what like DBAs do except DBAs. So you better start explaining it to folks. Understand your value, because really when databases are quiet and nobody knows that nothing is wrong, that's when you're doing your best job. So if you're quiet, then they go, why do we need that database administrator? So you better be explaining your value day in and day out. So when do you consider exiting? Definitely. If you're getting offers for considerable increases, it may be time to leave to other jobs. Even if it's somewhere else. It is quite a well-known scenario among big companies that folks will leave one company, go to like 2 other companies, and come back and end up with like a 40% raise from when they left. This is not uncommon. So keep that in mind. If you are on the lower end of the scale, jumping every 2 years can do that. I can stay at the same company and get maybe 1 to 7% raise. That's just automatic. Or I can go somewhere else and get a 20 to 30% raise and aggressively move my way up. I did that for quite some time to move myself up to where I felt I should be. If you know your peers are making considerably more, don't be afraid to go to the business and just let them know, hey, you know, I became aware of this. I really want to talk to you about it because I know this is what I have produced in the last year. This is what I've done. I should be compensated for it. It would only be fair. Don't make it personal, just make it fact driven and straight. Always have a network, opportunities in your pocket ready to pursue. Like I said, I'm always talking to folks. I can tell you just this last week, Meta and GCP were both after me, and I'm always talking to them. Do I want to leave? I love Microsoft. I don't plan on it. But do I keep those offers always there and always open in communication and networking? Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. The olden days of having, you know, pensions and being very dedicated to a company, that's changed. And it's important for you to change that too. Little skill growth and training. We also discussed this about that. What if they stay? If there's an opportunity or workaround for training that businesses are willing to put in for you, they're like, there's no money in budget, but I found this opportunity to learn, or hey, I found this, will you consider sending it to me, and they can take money out of another part of the budget. That's great. That means stay. If you can become involved in community opportunities, you know, just as you're seeing right here, that you can learn from, and they have technical options, that is awesome. Awesome. I know that we were just talking, I'm seeing in the chat about another invalidation, abrasive instead of aggressive. I have been called that. I've had HR address a manager that said, well, Kellyn is aggressive. And she said, no, Kellyn is assertive. You know, corrected the person. I really appreciate that. Whenever you hear somebody utilize words incorrectly about women or people of color because they view them differently in their communication. You know, I have a very unique perspective of this because my husband and I are on the same team doing the same exact thing. And we're very aware that we used to send emails in the other person's names just to see what would happen. And we're very aware of that whole situation. And I'm sure others here on this call have, in this session, have read the story about the two teammates, male and female, that ended up with the reverse on the signatures. And the guy was like, God, that was the worst week of my life. And the woman was like, that was the easiest week of my life when they thought I was him. We've experienced that. My husband felt that I wasn't being assertive on an email enough. And we sent it with my name. He wrote it. And the response came back that I needed to look for a job somewhere else. It was an eye opener for him. His jaw dropped. He could not believe that I could not set the same kind of boundaries he could. So yes, absolutely, women are viewed very differently than men when it comes to how we word things, how we're allowed to word things, how we're allowed to communicate. So extremely important. I do strongly believe in being direct. I am very blunt. And at the same time, I find that many times I use it with a smile to get away with things that being just similarly blunt as my husband, I would not be able to get away with. Where are we at here? Pay for training as investment in yourself. I have done this. I have paid for my own training and told my bosses, and they're like, why did you do this? And why are you doing this training? We didn't tell you you could. And I said, well, I paid for it myself. There's not really anything you can do, correct? I'm taking PTO and doing this. And they're saying, can you explain why you're doing this? And I said, it's an investment in myself, and left it at that. You know, you can take it off on tax, claim it on taxes, at least something. It's not as easy as it used to be, but something. And make sure it goes on LinkedIn, get credit for it, help it pay forward. And if leadership has a history of doing this and viewing training as a risk to losing you, it's probably time for them to lose you and let you go somewhere else. You know, and if training is approved, but then they keep interrupting your training or calling you back to work or making it impossible for you to gain value from that training, it's also probably a time to leave. So next, how to know your best job. Make a list what, you know, makes the best job for you. From all your job history, what did you enjoy the most about every one of the jobs that you've had? List those down. What did your manager do that you really liked about this manager? I like to say, manager gives me the freedom. I don't like being micromanaged. It gives me the freedom, says, there's the finish line. Kellyn, get me there, win me the race. That's a good manager for me. I appreciate semi-annual reviews, things like that. I've had those talks with people. They're like, you actually have reviews? Oh my gosh, I would love a review. You know, things like that. You recognize these are things that are extremely important. Intentional collaboration, that you have tools in place that you can collaborate and get the most out of those you work with, even if it's remote. Those tools are available to you, or in-person collaboration, some way that you can actually get the most out of those that are with you for growth. Remote work, if that's important to you. Write down all those things that are essential to you to make your work the best place possible. This would be my dream job. Review your current job, and on a scale of 1 to 10, where does it fall on all those? Is it meeting that list, or is there some places that it can improve upon? Review with your managers too. Look at your managers. How is this manager stacking up against previous managers? Right now, my current Microsoft manager is right up there with that 10 list, and that makes me happy. I've gotten to the point that if I don't have a good manager, I'm complaining. My last manager was not up there. Like, you know, 2 managers back, I had a fantastic manager. Last manager, not so good. I'm quite vocal about it. I'm not scared of saying it. He wasn't the right manager for me, and made that very clear. I need a good manager. Don't do this publicly or on a company shared drive unless you're me and you know that GCP or Meta will hire you tomorrow. So be cautious of this. But, you know, be honest with yourself. I think that's the most important thing. And know what you don't want, or what shouldn't be offered. And this is something that's important. When I had a manager that was having trouble managing me, I took this was a recommendation from Buck Woody, who is in the unfortunate space of being my mentor. And that the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and I put a link on the slides to this if you haven't done this, this isn't at a cost, but it really is incredibly valuable and very accurate. It's kind of like Myers-Briggs, but it's based off of what skill sets you have technically and how you're going to provide best collaboration, what's going to be your best manager, how you will contribute most to a company. I love this. It really was incredibly valuable. I attach it to my assessment and my career plan every single 6 months at Microsoft. I want to make sure that it's read, it's understood. I'm not scared of it. It shows exactly where I will be best and where I will be weak. Incredibly powerful. So I love this. I ask for peer reviews regularly. I want constructive criticism, how I can be better. A bizarre thing that I was trying to figure out is I was automatically accepting meeting requests. I thought it would just, you know, I'm going to go anyway, just let it accept it. Found out that I would then go back each week and get rid of the ones that I couldn't when I was multi-booked up and stuff like that. It was coming back. It was making hard for people to book. So this was constructive criticism that I got back in peer reviews to let me know that something that I was on the fence was really was jeopardizing my weekly schedule, and got rid of it. So these are really helpful, anything like that. I do use LinkedIn for my own benefit. Many folks don't recognize that there are algorithms in there about your skills. It only uses the top 10, the first 10 skills that are in there in the top 10 list to match you up as well as for searches, and ensure that those interests are there. Sometimes there's going to be old stuff left over. Get rid of it. Get rid of it because it can impact on how people are searching for you. Also know that it also impacts who is also searched with you. If you look on your LinkedIn profile, it'll say who else came up in searches when people were searching that you came up for. Look at that list of people. Are they in your same industry? Are they the people that you would want to come up in comparison with you? If not, look through your profile, see what needs to change, and watch that list change over time and make sure it's going the direction that you want. Because this serves both of you and lets you know my career is going in the direction that I want it to. And keys, factors for making work not suck. Have a long-term plan on what's important for satisfying your work environment. Like we said just 2 slides back, make a list, 1 to 10. Where is it going? Is your career the right thing? Have you outgrown where your career is going? Do you want to change it up a little bit? I know as a technical person, I don't want to be doing admin tasks, but I'm really good at some project product management solutions. I can provide value there, but how far do I want to get into that world before I lose my technical opportunities that keep me enticed and keep me excited? Don't let people waste your time. A lot of people love to waste time, especially for people of color and women. They will waste time in the way of asking questions that they already know the answer to, or just to make you verify that you know what you're talking about. Don't let them do it. Call them out on it. Don't be afraid to. They will step back. Don't just say yes to requests. Say yes to requests that have impact. I think that it's really easy that we're glad to be called upon, but be glad to do things that you really want to do. I've often found that we have a tendency in the DBA world to be DBA mommies. That means doing all the things that nobody else will do, think will be recognized for it. We need to have a balance of impact versus administration that needs to be taken care of, or tasks that nobody else wants to do. And it should be shared with our male peers. Don't let them put this way on you, and the guys are doing all the fun stuff. It should be equal. So make sure that you get those impactful solutions as part of this. Avoid high drama in politics. It's a waste of time, and tell people that. I am not afraid of that. I have been hung up on when I've told them that I appreciate that you want to talk to me about this, but this is a waste of my time. Either get to the point, or I need to end this phone call because I have other things that I have to address right now. I'm not scared to say that. I think that you should be able to do that too. Look to projects that may have a cool factor, but may not have a cool factor, but high impact. I love how everybody loves machine learning, machine learning, AI, all this stuff right now that we're hearing about. And I'm going to compare it to teenagers having sex. Everybody's talking about not a lot of doing it, and they're not doing what needs to be done. The reason I did Oracle and Azure is because it was necessary. We needed it. Nobody was doing it, and it was causing us so much. And every time somebody says, but I want to do machine learning, Kellyn, it's like, if you don't have my Oracle data to feed your machine learning models, guess what? You're not going anywhere. You need me. Make sure people understand that there are a lot of rough diamonds out there. And if you make yourself necessary for the company, you will never be hungry again. And that's where I'm at. I provide a lot of value there. The dark horses, the projects that people say will never work, are the ones that I really can sink my teeth into, especially as a woman in technology, because no one else is fighting over them. I get to pretty much run them and run the world, and it gives me a lot of success and a lot of satisfaction. With that, here's some of the links that I pulled some of this data from. And with that, are there any questions? And I think I went over a little bit, so apologies.
No, that's okay. I think you're like 2 minutes short right now. So you're good. You're good. Oh, and I see a lot of comments. We're kind of chatting with each other too and commenting on things you said. I don't think there's any specific questions in the chat for you.
Yeah, I see the strengths about the Clifton strengths. That has been incredibly powerful. I've got a great boss in Ed, and it was funny that the first thing he did, he's like, I see that you have a Clifton strengths out there. I'm going to read it. And he could figure out very quickly about how I run best. The joke is that I run amok. You just let me run amok and I will win the world for you. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that he was willing to take the time and learn about what makes me a good employee and what makes him a good boss for me.
Kellyn, I have a question.
Yes.
So about peer reviews, my experience with peer reviews is that every time I voluntarily ask someone, it gets incredibly patronizing and one-sided. It's like men love to be asked that. They love to peer review someone, and there is nothing, I mean, they don't ask you for what you think about them. At least very few of them do. I've had one person, I think, where I work who's asked me for it. That's it. So how do you determine who is the right person to ask for a peer review from?
I think it's somebody who is incredibly constructive. You're looking for folks that give constructive feedback in other areas as well. Ones that see your value. Because if they see your value, it isn't just say, oh, I want that yes, I want that good feeling, from a peer review. It's saying that they see that I have value, but I see that they give constructive criticism when we're dealing with a situation, and they're a good person to come to and see what's really going on. I'm always looking for that. Like I said, I do get, and I ask for a lot of peer reviews. I usually do about 20 every 6 months, and I ask for them, and some of them don't respond back at all. I don't take it personally. We're all busy. It happens. But I'm really appreciative of those that come back and say, you know, hey, you do this really great, but it might be better if you did this. Are you aware of this? One I'll just use as an example. George Walters gives great constructive feedback. Great constructive feedback. He will pinpoint and link to stuff that I never learned because I had to onboard myself. The person who was supposed to onboard me left. I joke that I do everything the hard way. You know, I learned the hard way. So that he gives me those links. I'm like, that's the easy way to do it. Awesome. So I appreciate that feedback from them. But you're always looking for those kind of people that say, you know, this is the easier way to do this. And I don't take it as patronizing. I take it for the value that it's giving me.
No, the reason I
for
say it's patronizing is because they would never dream of asking you of what you think about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I grow from it, I'm all right. If they want to stay stagnant, that's all right with me. I think it's a character flaw on that person's part. I guess that's kind of how I view it. I don't know. I think to each their own very much. And I think that's me personally. But I don't worry too much about it. I want that feedback. I want that feedback. If there's something I can learn and be better, that's all kudos for me. That's all good for me. That's all good for me. I'm going to grow. So that's just kind of how I view it. It helps me. If they don't want to help themselves or they want feedback from somebody else, that's cool. I don't take it personally.
Okay.
I hope that helps, Mala.
No, it certainly helps to understand a different perspective because I'm not that way, probably because I've been patronized so many times that I'm always leery about that. Like, okay, am I giving this person another chance to think I'm, you know, down there for him to criticize?
And that's the biggest challenge, I think. If it's just criticism and they're complaining and not giving you options, not giving you an opportunity to improve in that area. If they just say, oh, you suck here, you're not doing this, you know, oh, every time I bring you into a call, I never get the answer I need. What am I supposed to do with that? You can't do anything with that. That's not constructive feedback. I will say Microsoft does have a official peer review system. We ask for that as part of our connects. And maybe that's why we get so many of them. You know, it's good to have that. There's a culture of doing that. If the company has an official, you know, feedback loop that's happening all the time, that's going to make a difference too. And you're going to more likely get something that is very productive and know that it's official. So you're not going to have so much whining by people to give instead of constructive feedback being received.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of process. I think I worked at one place that had it, just one.
Yep.
And another place used to read what people say of each other and try to play it against them. So that was not a good thing. That been there too.
Yep. And most of my feedback, I spread it out. You know, I want some from sales. I want some from technical. I want some from the account teams. I want some from engineering. I'll spread it all out because, you know, there's so many different interactions that we have. And even if they don't understand what my role is, you know, we joke about this. Everybody's a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, you know, on the technical side, and I'm not. So you'll have some that do pre-sales and you'll have some that'll do post-sales. And I'm like the same as like the global black belt. You know, we're brought in very post, you know, implementation to remove technical roadblocks that are deep technical specific. If they don't understand that, they just say, well, that's a CSA and she didn't come in and do a pre-sales call. I'm not allowed to be in pre-sales. Sorry. You know, it's a challenge. You just go, well, thank you for answering that feedback, but yeah, I'm not going to get a lot out of it. Oh, well, I got 16 others that do provide me feedback. My boss knows the difference. So hope that helps because it is, I think that's the challenge is, and I've seen where I've asked feedback for employees that reported to me and I would get feedbacks from people that I expected something constructive and like, you just wasted that person's time reading this. Thanks a lot. You know, you want people to be better at that, especially leaders. Any other questions from anyone?
Not in the chat.
You guys are all ready for the weekend, I know.
I know. I still have to do more work today. We have this production emergency. I still have to fix stuff in 5 minutes. I'm supposed to be online fixing things. But I love this. I loved a lot of it. I mentioned, you know, the idea that how they don't replace people when they quit. So like our team of 3 became a team of 2, and it's a whole long story. I used to be on call every 10 weeks when I started. Now I'm on call every other week. You know, things just sort of like move in that direction, and you're like, oh boy. So my boss,
we're seeing that everywhere. Yeah. It's, you know, when I came over to the CAE, the Cloud Architecture and Engineering team, they asked me if I knew anybody who had my skills, and I'm like, I'm married to him, and they hired Tim. So it's pretty much, they call it Gorman as a service. It's the 2 of us. And they've finally realized that, you know, oh my gosh, we need more people, and they're going to hire more. But we had to fight to open up more headcount. We had to move us from data and AI over to infrastructure to get that. Luckily, we just said in November, we're leaving. If you guys can't get this under control, we're leaving. We're tired of the marketing saying one thing and reality being another. We're drowning over here. We won't do it. We like our lives, and we're married to each other. So you know very well there's a united front here, and it made a huge difference, but you can't always do that. You know, I can't recommend that enough, that you've got somebody that has your back, and the other way, you know, the other way around, that you support each other. And luckily there was so much backing for us that we got it. We were able to shift this over from data and AI to infra. And then from there that we've got, you know, executive sponsorship and a PM and sales initiative and everything.